Welcome to Traveling Oracle, the magical podcast, where we talk energetics, spirituality, and how you can use this etheric knowledge to drastically change, transform, and up-level all areas of your life. Are you ready for the glow up? Let's go. Hello, my loves. It is a beautiful day to change lives. And before we get into this week's episode, I just want to get a few things out of the way. Number one, we are at week 2 in Unleashed, which is my manifestation container, and it is blowing people's minds. In week 1, we talk about the subconscious mind and wealth energetics. We go deep into the subconscious mind to root out, well, first identify, then root out any negative subconscious stories that are haunting you when it comes to your wealth energetics. We root them out and we implant new subconscious stories that better serve you, that help to push you towards your goal, that helps to support you on your way towards your goals. And then in week 2, we talk about gratitude, the secrets of gratitude, and why gratitude is actually the building block of manifestation. So many of us, we try so hard to manifest and things either move so slowly or not at all. And it's because we haven't primed our energy. We haven't done the building work to support huge manifestations, because at this age or stage in life, we're not trying to manifest lollipops, we're not trying to manifest small things. Most of us are trying to manifest love or property or a successful business, and all of that takes a huge capacity to hold, and we don't think about that part. So it's super important. In week 3, we're going to go into self-concept and raising our vibration. And in week 4, we're going to we're going to dive deep into the body as the portal through which you anchor your manifestations. So many of us are able to draw things towards us, but we're unable to ground it into reality and have it blossom in our lives. We see opportunities coming our way that fizzle out and don't work out. So what is the secret to grounding something in your reality so that it sticks and stays and blossoms in your life? The secret is the body, and we're going to get into that in week 4. Of course, my signature coaching program, Awakened the Glow Up, is always running, and Awaken is for those who are going through a spiritual awakening. And remember, a spiritual awakening has many waves. Wherever you are in that process, whether it's wave 1 or wave 10, Awakened will guide you through that tumultuous time. Because even if you've done it before, most times, you can't see your own mess. You can't see your own things because you are in the middle of the storm. Awakened is a guiding program to help you to connect deeply with your minds, connect deeply with your body, and connect deeply with your spirit, and then balance these 3 aspects of your being so that you can connect to and activate that divine energy that is your soul. Once these 3 things are in balance, it's like a secret recipe for divine connection. Your gifts start to appear once you harmonize and balance these things. Your connection with your intuition is stronger once you connect and balance these 3 aspects. The secret to any spiritual awakening, the secret to deepening any divine connection, any connection with the spiritual world, is by balancing these 3 aspects of your being. So if you're interested in any of those programs below, click the link in my bio. Those of you who listen to my podcast, you get a discount for rating and reviewing this podcast. So without further ado, we're going to go to our lovely guest, Kyle Lipton, and I will have to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode because the internet connection in Bali is not great. I just used my hotel Wi-Fi. Next time I'm going to have to look for a co-working space because they have better internet connection. And as a result, sometimes you're going to hear little glitches when Kyle is speaking. But I'm happy to say, after running through it and editing it, it did not spoil this episode. The things that we speak about here are powerful and will definitely help to deepen your connection and help you on your own personal journey. All right, let's get to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Traveling Oracle and Magical Podcast. As usual, I am super excited to have you here. And I'm even more excited this episode because we have the first guest of this entire podcast, Kyle Lipton. Look at him. You're dancing, Kyle, but they'll never see because I'm only using the audio.
That's okay. I'm dancing for me anyways.
True. So I'm super excited. Kyle is a comedian, a spiritual consultant, and a bunch of other things that I cannot find the words to put together. And he has a special place in my heart. He is like one of my best internet friends because we've never actually met in person, Kyle. Isn't that crazy?
It's not that crazy. I feel like we met in person though. I feel like we have.
Right. I know exactly what you mean. Like one of those people that you've never met, but you've always known.
100%.
So in this episode, I had y'all know I don't plan my episodes. I really don't like to super plan everything. I kind of leave space for spirit to be like, oh, we're taking this episode in this direction. So loosely, we're talking about spiritual awakening was what I got when I was meditating, because the reason I invited Kyle was I was actually in meditation. I was meditating, and all of a sudden the podcast popped in my mind and two people popped in my mind and Kyle was the first one. And I was like, yeah, let's invite Kyle to talk about what's going on. Because Kyle, to me, is one of those super, what I like to call magical creatures in human skin. What do you think about that title, Kyle?
I like it. I like it a lot. I can't say anything bad about that. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know this, but you are actually one of the first persons outside of myself that I spoke to about anything spiritual or mystical or anything like that. Like at the beginning of my journey, guys, Kyle offered, well, I followed him on Instagram because of one of his friends, David Lyon, whose videos I used to watch on YouTube. And then in one of his videos, he mentioned his magical friend, Kyle. I was like, who this? Let me see what's going on. So I went on your Instagram and I followed you and I was like, okay, I like the content that I'm seeing here and resonating with it. And he offered a pay what you desire session, psychic session. And I was like, I'm poor as shit. And what I have to offer is maybe $10 or $15. I was like, that's a little bit. I was like, that's a little bit, but something was like, Akil, that's all you can. He said, pay what you desire. So let's go. And that session with you, Kyle, really helped to bridge a gap in my mind because I was in a struggling place of struggling between what I've been taught and what I knew, versus where I was going, where spirit was trying to lead me. Your session helped me to bridge that gap. Like, look, you are a magical creature. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see you with crystal. Yeah. I can see you reading tarot. I can see you doing all these things. And I said to myself, that is crazy. What is it talking
about? I remember so clearly you were talking about, let me do some business. I forget, like, what do you think about business consulting? And I'm like seeing you with, witch life and oracles. And you're like, well, okay.
But I love, and that's when I knew how connected you were spiritually, because fast forward like a year or two, everything that you told me in that session, I have done that and more. Like every single time. You know when you talk to someone psychic and they say some things and you're like, okay, look at you dancing. You're like, yeah, okay. And then in a year's time, you're like, oh crap, remember that one session you had where this person said you're going to do this? Everything you said happened.
Well, I'm grateful. I had a session with someone yesterday in person, actually, when I was living in Mexico. And he wanted to book another session. He was like, yeah, remember that girl you told me I was going to meet? She's here and she wants to join on the session too. And I was like, awesome.
I love that connection.
So yeah, I absolutely love seeing those things come true. It's really, really fulfilling.
Well, what I wanted to ask you though, even to start this conversation off, is how did all of this start for you? Because I feel like a lot of the listeners from my podcast are in a place of transition where spirit is calling them, where they're going through the first waves of their spiritual awakening. And I feel like there's a lot of fear around
what happens next? How, like, what do I do? Like, so for me, I like to give it stories about how it started for me and how I dealt with it and what I did. But it's important for people to hear from a range of other people to see what it can look like for different people and see how it played out in other people's lives. So how did this start for you?
Well, I'm gonna just preface before anyone comes into my inbox after this podcast, being like, I want to pay what you desire. I don't offer those anymore. Just before anyone's coming in here to my inbox, being like, let me get a session. Yeah, I have sessions in there. All right, it was a one-time limited thing that I did. I've done it a couple of times actually, but I've been in this world of spirituality, I would say roughly for the past like 10 years. I got into meditation. That was really kind of one of my gateways into spirituality, meditation, going deep with it. And, but when it comes to like the psychic gifts and awakening to more of the supernaturalness, I had a mentor of mine and he said something to me. He was like, start trusting your first thought, that first like intuitive impulse. And I remember I started playing around with this, and I can distinctly remember the moment where I just knew I was connected. I was in Santa Monica at this place called the 3rd Street Promenade, for anyone who's ever been to Los Angeles. And I saw this vision of my friend's soul being strangled. And, you know, we're just walking around, two dudes, just, I don't even know what we were doing, getting a bite to eat. And I was like, bro, I see a vision of your soul being strangled. And I'll never forget the way that he looked at me after I said that. He looked like he just saw a ghost. He was like, wow, dude, I've been having this tightness in my throat chakra. And that was a really, really pivotal moment. And I think one thing that I recommend to people, I did an intuition workshop. And in the workshop, one of the things that I shared was start playing around with trusting your first thought. And the more that you do that, the more that you surrender and take that leap, the more you'll start to see, oh, I'm not fucking crazy. Yeah. Oh, wow, this stuff really is coming true. Wow, I'm more intuitive than I thought I would be.
Evidence starts
to show up. It could be as simple as, you know, right. It could be as simple as you go to Tesco and something's like, go to Tesco at 9 p.m., go get some almond milk. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really need almond milk. I like regular milk. It's like, go get almond milk. And you go to that aisle and you bump into someone. And you have some magical encounter. Or it could be as, you know, quote unquote crazy as, all right, tomorrow book a ticket all the way across the world. You'll receive more information later.
Oof.
And I really strive to live my life like that. I have stories on stories of like putting this shit to the test. It's not something I read in a book. It's not, you know, The Secret or anything. It's like there's a really great quote by a guy called Terence McKenna, and he says, this is how magic is done. You leap into the abyss and you realize that it was only just a bed of feathers.
Yes.
And yeah, and that has been my direct life experience. And I put myself into fucking scary ass situations, but every single time I see, okay, bro, you can keep trusting these impulses. You're always taken care of, and it's never let me down to this day.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful when you talk about trusting your first thought or your first like intuitive hit, because that's one of the things that I had to learn or relearn, because coming from a super religious background, like I was coming from, organized religion in general teaches you not to trust yourself. Like, you're not enough, you don't know enough. Then it says, go to God. But what I've learned through my spiritual journey is that I have a divine connection to God. Like, my soul is divine energy, and therefore my intuitive hits are divine directions, and that I need to trust it. This idea that everything that you need to seek is outside, I found that that's just not as reliable as going inside and seeking that divine connection inside. And so that's really powerful when I hear that. Trusting yourself, trusting the only thing in this world that you own is your body, and the only thing that you have is your soul, right? And if you can't trust that, what can you trust?
And that's I would argue is the basis for leadership. How much you're actually able to trust yourself. And, you know, so many people, clients and people, they want to know everything. They're like, well, tell me the whole vision. And I heard this from another mentor. I'll apply it because it makes so much sense. It's faithful with a little will be entrusted with a lot.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So if you can't be faithful with the little intuitions that say, go get almond milk or take a walk right now, why would God, Source, Spirit, Buddha, Allah, Krishna, whatever you believe in, be like, oh, here's everything.
Here's everything.
If you can't follow something as simple as take this trip, have this conversation, and then you start to energetically be able to hold more of, your soul's vision.
Yep.
But it starts with following those breadcrumbs, because those breadcrumbs will lead you somewhere. And sometimes needing to know actually blocks you from your direct knowing. It's that
absolutely
control. It's that I have to know. Like, to know it all, you already know it all. So why don't we just start and take the next step?
Yep, absolutely.
And you'll message me 6 months from now, and you'll see how you didn't need to know it all.
It's interesting because in one of my programs, that's one of the things that I teach. And there's a module on strengthening or connecting with your intuition. And one of the things that came to me when I was putting that together is practicing, like you say, with the little things. What I used to notice is when I got super connected is that I'll be walking through the door and then I hear a voice say, hey, bring that umbrella. And I look outside and the sun is blazing. And I'm like, bring an umbrella. It's like a desert outside. And I don't bring the umbrella. And then in about an hour or two, I'm drenched in rain. So it's like I've learned to follow those tiny things, and through following those tiny things and then them revealing themselves, why I was told to do this, I started to get the confidence. Okay, these tiny things that don't have much of an impact if I don't follow it. But when I do, okay, this is what happens. Oh, I follow this tiny thing. This is what happens. And it's just like building a relationship with someone. You start small, and as you start to see the evidence, because I get it, some of us aren't going to just get up and leap. Some of us do, but some of us need that evidence, and it's okay. Just follow the small intuitive hits and you'll see them reveal themselves, and you just grow and grow until you're able to follow the bigger hits. That's how you form a relationship with the divine. That's how you form trust. Even when you're talking about forming relationships with spirit guides and things like that, people have asked me, like, how do you know, like, what to follow if it's just your thought or la la la? And I'm like, you just got to test it. Test it for yourself. Don't just take what other people say. Don't, like you said, don't just take what's in books or what other people say. You listen, but test for yourself, and you'll see the evidence for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
100%.
super powerful. In your previous answer, when we talked about, how you started, you mentioned meditation. How did you get into meditation? Because there's a lot of people who, and I always recommend meditation on my podcast. Like, people will tell you I preach meditation, but for some people it's really, really hard. Do you have any tips for anyone beginning, any type of meditation you would recommend for starters?
Okay. So you asked two questions in that. You asked, how did I get into meditation, and what meditation do I recommend?
Yeah.
Which question do you want me to answer? Or both of them?
Both of them. Let's start with how you got into it.
Okay. So flashback, 16-year-old Kyle. There's a funny story. So I remember going on YouTube and seeing these videos of these guys picking up women. They'd like walk up to women on the street, and I hadn't kissed a girl until I was 16. And I remember being like, wow, this is really awesome. And anyways, I started getting deeper into that world for a minute. And then in that, they also preach a lot of these self-development concepts and personal growth concepts. And one of the guys was talking deeply about meditation. And that's actually how I got into it. And I started reading this book called The Power of Now. I remember being in like one of my classes, just had it on my phone. I'm like reading this book. And in terms of what meditation I'd recommend, there's no real meditation I'd recommend. I would just, I'd recommend just sitting and breathing, observing, seeing what your thoughts are saying. Just literally creating space, imagining yourself as the person just looking at kind of the movie that's happening in your mind. And it might be really fucking hard at first. And the practice is not to identify with the thoughts, just literally looking at them, seeing them, and being like, oh, wow, that's strange. I'm thinking about pizza right now. I guess my mind thinks I'm hungry. Let me just look at that. And if you're someone who, it's really hard to meditate, find a guided meditation or a hypnosis or something like that where you can allow yourself to go deep and just relax for a bit.
Yeah, I think the guided meditation especially is really helpful for first-time people. But I like that you pointed out the observation of thought, because I think what trips many people up is this idea that meditation is just completely emptying your mind. And if you haven't done that, you're not meditating. And then they get stuck in this loop of, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. And beating themselves up. And then they miss the whole point of meditation.
100%.
Yeah, so I really like that of observing your thought. Of course, try to empty your mind if, just try to quiet your mind, but just observe the thoughts that come. Don't beat yourself up because you're thinking. Observe it and try to get back to a quiet place.
Right. And to even, I'll just say this, to even piggyback on that, it's only the thought that's beating yourself up. Right. So even something as it's like, oh, I'm beating myself up. When you catch yourself in those moments, it's like you can look at yourself talking and being like, beating myself up. It's like a broken record that's just playing and playing. And then the more you can create space, the better you get at your practice.
Yeah. It's reminding me of a lot of things in this conversation. Is reminding me of this book that I literally just finished reading yesterday called The Surrender Experiment. And have you read it?
I have the book and I've gotten bits of it, but no, I haven't read it, but I know the gist of it.
Yeah, it's such a powerful book for me. It gave me such a perspective shift. And he was talking about the same thing you were talking about, observing this voice in your head that's running the show, that you just follow just whatever it says. And he's like, when he realized that he could separate himself from that voice and observe it and then realize, oh, this voice is just talking some shit. This voice is just being critical over something that doesn't make sense, and it's causing me to make ridiculous decisions for my life. So that observation of the voice is super important, and it literally will change a lot in your life. Because what I realized for me, sometimes you don't realize how ridiculous the thoughts that you think are. Like you're going out and you think everyone's looking at you and everyone's thinking, and it's like, girl, no one even sees you right now. Like, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I'll give a good analogy. If anyone here's ever not watching, if anyone here's listening, I want you to imagine yourself in a time, maybe you're in a busy place. Maybe you're in Mexico or a big city or somewhere. And there's always sometimes those people that stand outside of the restaurant that are like, come in. But you're like, I actually don't want to come in.
Yeah.
And that's what creating, you're like, I ate, I'm good. And creating spaces, walking, observing the mind, trying to take you into another door and being like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, that's just you offering something to me that I actually don't want to participate in. And I can look at you asking me, but that doesn't mean I need to accept the invitation. So it's I can see my thoughts, but I don't have to believe my thoughts, because my thoughts, for the most part, are a fucking product of my conditioning anyways. Yep. And if I believe my conditioning, then I'm just back in the little matrix loop.
Yep. I even the other day, I had my own experience with it where I was in a restaurant here near where I live, and I was about to watch something while I ate. So I was putting in my earphones. There was a woman behind me watching something on a tablet, right? She had no earphones, no nothing. And it was just blaring out in the restaurant. And I'm like, how selfish is that for you to not even think that there's somebody beside you trying to live in their own world, trying to do their own thing, and you don't have, your earphones in, your volume is super loud. And I started to get really angry. But that perspective shift helped me, because then I noticed myself getting really angry. I stopped and I was looking at the thoughts, and the thoughts were, who does she think she is? She doesn't even care about anybody else around her. And I was observing myself getting angrier and angrier. And I'm like, Akil, you don't have to go into that place because you're here getting super angry. That woman is behind you, not even knowing what is happening, living her life, yet you're here getting worked up. And I was like, okay, I see those thoughts of anger. I see those thoughts of who does she think she is? But you know what? You don't know what's happening with that woman. You don't know how she was brought up. You don't know. It's fine. You don't need to react. You don't need to get upset. And then I just felt it subside and I was okay. That's when I realized as well how powerful that ability to observe your thoughts can be, because it can take you out of certain situations. It can take you out of certain mindsets, because stuff like that can happen to you at work with your boss who's doing this and that, or your coworker who's doing this and that. And if you don't have the inner awareness to talk to yourself and reason with yourself, you can find yourself in situations that are not helpful for your life.
Yeah, and that's why I think slowing down and observing your thoughts is so powerful, because even if we take something at relationships, sometimes we're not even in relationship with a person. We're in relationship with our thoughts about that person.
Hell, that's my entire life. And that's something I've come to realize.
Right? So it's literally, oh, this person, so-and-so, they're like this. They're usually like this. They don't listen. And now we're just in this little mental loop in our own fucking world, completely disconnected from the actual person, stories about them, then reacting to the stories about them, then having a conversation based upon the stories we're reacting to about them, versus observing the thought and being like, well, who is this person in this right now present moment?
Yep.
How unfair is it that I'm holding this person to? How unfair is it that I'm actually not with this person? And there's a really beautiful study in quantum physics. It's called the observer effect. Yeah. And it goes like, the observer is affecting what's being observed.
Yes.
So it's like how I'm viewing someone, how I'm holding them inside of my own consciousness is also creating my experience of them. And this is where shit like really radical responsibility gets to come in and be like, okay, let me take responsibility for how I'm viewing this person.
Yeah.
And choose to show up differently.
It's so powerful that you mentioned that, because something I'm working on for myself in my life right now is self-love and looking at how I'm viewing relationships and things like that. And that is something I've observed about myself, that I will meet a person, and even if we get into a long-term relationship and things like that, there becomes this disconnect between who this person actually is and who I view them as in my mind. And so I always have a view of who this person could be and who I want them to be, right? And that's who they are in my mind. And then the trouble comes when that person actually just bees themselves, which is different from how I think they are, who I think they are, right? And so I'm like, Akil, observing your thoughts is super important, because if I didn't realize that, I would just continue doing that for the rest of my life, meeting someone and forming an opinion of who I want them to be, and not reconciling that with who they actually are. Super important.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a client of mine today, and I shared with her, every time you try and argue with reality, you lose.
I'm laughing because I've been losing a lot lately. Trust me, yeah, that's a powerful lesson.
And you can't change what you don't accept. Right. So I shared this with her. I was like, okay, you don't have to give an example. Say, everyone's in their kind of New Year. I don't know when this is coming out, but everyone's in their New Year's resolution phase. They're hitting the gym. They're doing all the things. You can't lose weight until you accept that you gained some weight. But if you pretend like you ain't gained some weight, you're not even going to try and lose weight. And the more that we can start to accept reality as it is, the more we have the ability to change it as we want it to be.
Yeah.
But if we don't accept someone, something, a situation as it is, there's no way to actually shift it.
Absolutely. And also, I think what's most difficult for people, and if you're not doing your inner work to understand your inner world, you don't realize or accept your part in a lot of the foolishness in your life. Like, it's the hardest thing to accept that most of the problems in your life are stemming from you. When I realized that, I was like, damn, me? I'm the problem.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I want to piggyback on that. So I think this is a great math problem for anyone who wants to make it really simple. I have all this foolishness in my life. What's the common denominator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the common denominator in a life right now that's full of foolishness.
Yep.
All right. Well, that means that I also have the ability to make my situations unfoolish, wise, awesome, adventurous. But if we can't shift what we don't take responsibility for. So I love that you said that.
Absolutely, because that realization of just self-responsibility, because remember, if you're responsible for all the foolishness in your life, like you said, it means then that you can shift all of this foolishness. I could do some things differently to create a new reality. If I don't like the relationships I've been in, I have to look towards myself. Why am I choosing these people? Yeah, I can say that, oh, only these type of men are attracted to me, but attraction doesn't mean a relationship. I am accepting it, and I am consenting to certain things. So what can I change about myself? What can I change about what I'm doing, how I'm choosing people, or how I'm looking at people? Like you're the only one responsible for your life. They're external factors, but you literally are the only one responsible.
And attraction also depends on the vibration you're at. When you're at a different frequency, you attract different things. And what's the word? If you go to a restaurant, they keep bringing you these shitty plates filled with like all the food you don't like. And you just say, you know what? It's fine. Mm-hmm. It's all right. I'll put a little bit of salt on it. Let me get some hot sauce. It's all good. And then you kind of start tolerating that reality versus going like, actually, can I see the menu? You got anything else besides these soggy ass mashed potatoes? And it's the moment that you decide to go, okay, I'm going to be someone different in this moment. I don't want to be someone that just says yes to a shitty food experience.
Yeah.
I want to be able to choose what I want. It sounds so funny. All the other options on the menu are attracted to you because they can feel you no longer are available for the mashed potato foolish life. Soggy mashed potato foolish life.
Absolutely. And so funny enough, I just started a new program called Unleashed this month that literally talks about that self-concept and changing how you view yourself and what you're here for and what you're no longer here for, and changing that view, changing that inner world. I always say on this podcast, everything that's around you, everything you can see is a direct reflection of what you believe inside. Every single thing you have, every product you have in your room that you're looking at right now, every possession you have, every relationship that you have, it's a direct result of what you believe you deserve and what you are entertaining, whether consciously or subconsciously. And I found that those subconscious beliefs, they're sneaky. They are sneaky when we look around and we see, well, I don't want this. Why is it coming? It's because there's a subconscious belief being held by you that's attracting this type of reality. And it's being attracted so that you can unearth that belief and change it. But what's happening is because of a lot of us, we're grown up in a society that doesn't value connecting with your inner world. It doesn't value that inward journey. We're unaware. And so we have a crappy life and we're like, why is it that only crappy things come to me? It's because you're unaware and you are being pulled to discussions like this, to podcasts like this, to help you to shine a light on those subconscious thoughts, to help you to shine a light on those inner beliefs for you to change them and then change your life.
I'll give an example. I had a client of mine. I have a lot of women clients, and one of them came to me, and she's been married for I think 10 years. And this is our first ever session together. And it was our first or our second session. And, she was on the verge of getting a divorce and thinking about ending things. And she's really big into personal development. It's just like a really fucking high performing woman. And, I kind of started to pick up on the dynamic that was going on. She wants to get him to be this personal development guy, and shift and be all about it kind of rotates. And I was like, what area do you really want to work on in your relationship? And she was like, I really love more sex and intimacy.
Mm.
And this is coming back to responsibility. I love to quote Einstein. He's like, stop trying to change a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it, right? It's like trying to solve overthinking by overthinking about it.
Yes.
So she had done certain things and approached things in a personal development just conversation. Instead of having another 2.5 hour long conscious conversation where by the end of it you both feel like you want to hit yourself over the head with like a frying pan, where you're just so exhausted. Of course you're not going to want to have sex stuff.
Yeah.
That. I was like, what if you just simply, next time he comes in the house, you're in lingerie, and you just whisper to him, hey, I'm going to go onto the bed, and I want you in there in the next 5 minutes, and I want you to take me.
Well,
and she was like, oh, I was like, it can be that easy. You don't need to use this kind of personal development view of things to make it harder than it has to be. And then she messaged me 2 days later. She's like, we both just had the best sex we've ever had in our life. And that was a reflection of her being responsible for how she's creating her reality.
Yeah.
And also how quickly things can change once you are responsible and choose something different.
Absolutely. Because that example is really interesting, because instead of being super defensive, like, oh, it's the other person. Well, if he just did this, if he just did that, it's like, okay, I'm sure there are things that he could have done, but we're here right now with you and me. Like, what can I change? And I'm realizing a theme. It's always coming back to, how can I be the change? Not how can Kyle do it? Well, it's me and Kyle here. What is Kyle doing? Why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? But it's, what can I do? And more than likely, once I start to make a change, whoever it is who also needs to make a change in that dynamic will also start to make that change within themselves on whatever they need to change as well. So it's like taking that responsibility of self and starting here. Super powerful message.
Yeah. Yeah. And instead of being tit for tat and being like, well, are they doing enough work? It's like, that's still coming from the most empowered version of you actually doesn't give a fuck if they're doing the work or not doing the work. The most empowered version of you is either going to go, okay, how do I shift something inside myself? Or maybe I need to leave this relationship.
Yeah.
But both of those still come from within you.
Inside. Right.
And I say this from such direct experience. If you're waiting on someone else so that you can finally feel happy and settled, you are going to have such a shit experience of reality that actually is still you creating that shit experience of reality by you choosing to wait.
Yes.
And it's a mind fuck. And instead of waiting, start creating.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why, guys, again, I always recommend, even if you're not a meditation person, start to get into it, because meditation is one of the most powerful tools to help you to understand these internal dialogues. Like, we wouldn't be able to sit here and talk about these things that we've noticed internally if we didn't have a practice that allowed us to quiet the external world and hear ourselves and observe the things that are happening internally. So even if you want to start with something as simple as, okay, every Sunday I'm going to take a walking in nature, just me by myself, like, just start a practice where you can hear yourself, you can feel your own energy. Don't bring along any boyfriend, girlfriend, don't bring along anyone, maybe you just your pets or something, but just give yourself that space to connect with yourself, because that's the starting of observing these thoughts, observing these patterns, observing these issues that are happening inside that's creating the reality outside that you might want to change. So, Kyle, I want to touch a little bit on the card, the infamous leap card, because I know you've had a lot of leaping to do. We've helped each other a lot in terms of reading for each other. And I know your journey is one that has always been of very deep valleys and very deep places you had to leap over. What would you say to someone who's coming up on a place where they have to leap? How do you find the strength to leap?
Okay. I can answer this twofold. I can give you just the basic answer that I think would also be helpful. And I have a really, really powerful story that I think would inspire a lot of people. That is so fucking magical and literally. Okay. So I'll start with this though. After my leaps in my life experience, the way that my mind functions at this point, it's like it makes more sense to leap than not to leap. Because I realize I will get everything that I want by leaping. My entire life will start to shift. So even on a logical level, it's like, well, why would I not leap? Why wouldn't I leap? So it's harder for me to not leap. It's harder for me to not, what's the word? Yeah, it's harder for me to not trust that because I know how much is going to be received, shifted, magic will occur for me doing that. And I'm more committed to that than anything.
So
I'll share a story.
Every leap that you've had was something amazing.
Yes, I'll put it like this. A lot of people want to play chess with God. They want to pretend like they could hide from the divine, God, source, whatever you want to call it. And they're like, well, I'm just going to stay in my little box of control and I'll go here. I'll go here. And God, for a little bit, might go, that's cute. Yeah, keep thinking you could do that. And then at some point, God's like, checkmate.
Yeah.
Checkmate. Could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 8 months, could be a day and a half. You will get fucking checkmate.
Yeah, there's always.
Don't try and outsmart the place where you came from.
Yeah. There's always a situation if you've been avoiding something. I've noticed that as well. You're like, you get the intuitive hit or the prod to go here, and you're like, nah. Then God's like, oh, okay. And then boom, a situation that makes you have to go here. It's almost like you don't want to wait until God reaches to the point where it's like, all right, cool, we're going to make that really ridiculous situation that's going to put you in the place that you're supposed to be in.
Yep. So this was February 2nd of 2018. I had a girlfriend at the time who was German, and she was living in Germany, and I had planned to see her end of February. On February 2nd, all the money that I basically had was a $300 credit card. That was it. And something, as I'm sitting on my desk, something was like, look up flights right now from LA to Berlin. I was like, okay. So I look up flights from LA to Berlin, and I see a flight for $180 one way from LA to Germany. And I remember seeing that. And the only quote unquote issue was that flight was leaving February 4th. So literally 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
I had, after I paid for that, it's $120, and I don't know where my next even going to come from.
Oh my God.
So, but my whole intuition, my whole spirit was like, and I paid a little extra for the little travel insurance just in case I decided to change my mind. But I booked the flight. I packed one backpack I basically didn't know how long I'd be gone for. Just me and one backpack.
Mm-hmm.
And the very next day, February 3rd, before my flight was leaving, I manifested a client that just randomly came into my space. Didn't know, I don't even know how it happened. I can't even remember. But that person paid me literally the next day. So even on a logical level, I probably made more money just by making that little intuitive decision than following. It's about following the frequency.
Yeah.
So if you're excited about something, but you don't know how it's going to happen, if you're inspired by something, but you don't know how it's going to happen, if you follow the frequency, that little hit of inspiration is kind of like a movie trailer to show you what your life could become if you decide to walk on that path and follow that frequency.
Absolutely.
Instead of going, oh, I need to be smart, I need to be logical, I need to pinch my pennies, I need to get all my ducks in a row. Sometimes your fucking ducks will go in a row when you actually take that leap, which looks like your ducks aren't in a row. As funny as that may sound. So anyways, I booked that flight. I fly all the way across the world, surprise her. And 2 weeks before I left LA, I had someone who I had given a free session to, who just so happened to live in Berlin, Germany. And, that's exactly the city I landed in. She signs up to do a whole 8-hour VIP in-person day with me in Germany. So I'm just paying attention, right? I'm seeing all of these threads of evidence of how supported I am when I trust my intuition. Mm-hmm. But this ain't even fucking half of what this journey was. So flashback maybe 6 months before, there was a medium who was just starting her practice, and she was like, I'm going to give out 50 free readings. And I decided to sign up for one. So this was maybe, I don't know, end of 2017, I got my reading. And she was like, you're going to have a powerful activation in England. I was like, I've never even been to England. I don't know. Never even heard that, thought that, felt that. And so I spent a month in Germany. My ex at the time needed to study more. So she stayed in Germany. And I was like, all right, I'm going to book a ticket to London. So I booked a ticket to London. And this time I had even less money. I had probably 50, 60 pounds. My first 2 nights that a friend let me stay at their place, and 30 days was my plan to be in London with no money scheduled to come
60
in.
Pounds. And
nothing.
As soon as you breathe in London, you spend 100 pounds, like literally.
Yeah. So I'm in Germany. It's my last day as I'm about to fly out. And I had a client who said she was going to sign up with me, but I just had this intuitive sense she was going to flake. And, I get a little voice message from her. She's like, hey, I've decided against doing the coaching with you. I was like, of course. And I felt this like anger, rage, irritation, because, I was in survival mode.
Yeah.
But as I'm in Germany, something just tells me, Kyle, you need to do a Facebook Live and channel this anger and just create content. And this is a few hours before my flight to London. And I'm like, okay, let me listen. Be a faithful servant to your intuition. I created a video. And then after the video was done, something was like, check to see who liked your video. And I was like, okay. And there was one guy who I had met one time who owns a wine company in California. And something was like, click his profile. I was like, okay. I clicked his profile. And the first post that I see is that him and his team are at the Raw Wine Festival in London. And I'm like, this guy lives in California. What are the odds? So I'm like, all right, I got to meet this guy. So I hit him up. He's like, oh, cool. We're going to go out for dinner. I'll take you out with me and my team. Got that planned out, sorted out. And next thing I know, I'm on this plane. I'm kind of freaking out about money. I'm heading to Stansted Airport in London. And I'm journaling. I'm like, I exude luxury and abundance with every step.
Doing your shadow work, yes.
So fast forward, I end up sleeping at the airport for the night. I book my little bus from Stansted Airport to London, which is like, I don't know, 12 pounds, which was like a quarter of my net worth at the time.
Not a quarter of your net worth.
Yep, a quarter of the net worth. So I get to, I'm trying to think where I was. I get to Pret a Manger. I like cried on the bus. I was freaking out. But I was in that trust. Yeah. I get to Pret a Manger and I just texted him because, we were scheduling our dinner and stuff. And I was like, thanks a lot for inviting me out to dinner. I really appreciate it. I forget exactly what I said. And I remember I have chills as I'm about to say this. The next message he sends me on WhatsApp is, do you need help? That's it. All he said, do you need help? I'm sitting in this coffee shop and I'm like feeling the masculine pride, wanting to present myself as having all my shit together, but also that really vulnerable feeling. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I do need help. And he goes, meet me at this hotel tomorrow or whatever it was, and I'm going to give you 500 pounds.
Damn.
And this is a guy I met once. And I'll never forget, I'm in this elevator. He's wearing a trench coat or something. He takes this money out, discreetly hands me 500 pounds. And I'm just like, my mind is getting blown and blown and blown. And he texted me and he was just like, we're all just walking each other home, bro.
That's so beautiful.
And it was so I end up going out to dinner with him, and I'm eating at like the fanciest restaurants in London with him and his team for like 3 nights straight. And then I'm reflecting on, wow, I literally was journaling. I exude luxury and abundance with every step and breath I take. I came here broke as shit. But now I'm literally in the reality that I was just journaling about.
That is amazing.
There's more. There's more. And
before you go on to more,
things were just, yes.
I just wanted to point out that even just up to this point in this story, how you were following all those little nudges and how they were all working out for you. Like you were just stepping out and the ground was forming underneath your feet. You were scared as shit. You didn't know what was going on, but you kept following those nudges. And not only you, him on his end, when he typed that message of, do you need help? That was a nudge for him. What if he didn't follow that nudge? Do you know what I mean? What if he didn't follow that nudge that says, hey, this guy $500? You know, like, so on both ends, like you guys were both following your intuition. I wanted to point out that following your intuition not only helps you, but look at how he followed his intuition and helped somebody else out. There's so many things that we're nudged to do that's going to powerfully impact someone else's life as well as ours.
Yep. Yeah, I've been guided so many times to either give someone money or say something or go somewhere, and I see how I impacted someone just by following that nudge, you know. But anyways, there's more stories there, but I digress. So I'm in London, and just the craziest things are happening. I get a PayPal notification from a mentor of mine at the time, and it was just $250, and it said, keep your head high and your heart open. He had no fucking clue. I hadn't communicated with him in months what I had been going through. He just randomly sent me, and he's never done that.
Wow.
He just randomly sent me $250 with that message.
Needed it.
Yeah. So I'm on a call. This is after I, had a little bit of money starting to flow through after all these experiences. And I'm planning on going to Bali the next month with my now ex. And we're on a FaceTime call. And she's like, do you want to book our tickets on Thursday? And I had almost all the money for a ticket, but not all of it. But I heard this little voice that was like, make a decision. And I go, yeah, you know what? As I'm on the call, I'm like, yep, we'll book our tickets on Thursday. I think we were talking on a Monday or something, Tuesday. As soon as I hang up the phone, I go and check my phone, and I have 4 voice messages from a guy who had been in one of my free programs in the past. He was like, dude, I just had a medium reading, and the medium told me that there's a guy named Kyle who's here to help me with emotional stuff. That Thursday, he becomes a client. That Friday, he sends me an extra payment I wasn't even expecting. So now I have all the money and so much more. And to top it all off, this is the cherry on top of the entire fucking story. The medium that gave me a reading, who said I would have a powerful activation in England, lives in Las Vegas. So she gave me my reading from, I think, Las Vegas, where she was 6 or 7 months before. She just so happened to be at a mediumship course in London at the exact same time I was in London.
Wow.
I end up going to Harrods, meeting her for fish and chips, and she basically saw me at the tail end of the entire journey she said I'd have a powerful activation at. And I was just like, what?
That's beautiful.
And that was the story.
That's a crazy.
But I'll finish
story.
with this.
Yeah.
I learned that your heart and soul will never lead you astray.
Yep.
And I learned at the deepest, like physiological, psychological, mental, spiritual, emotional level that if you trust your intuition, everything will work out. And I had every fucking good excuse in the book to not do any of the shit that I did. But because I did, I got the rewards. And there's that great quote, fortune favors the bold.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful story that shows literally the path we're talking about. Just trusting your intuition, trusting the little small nudges. Because like you said, I always say to myself that I can have a plan because I can see from here to there. But when I follow divine guidance, they're seeing the huge picture. They're seeing the parts that I can't see. I can't see where this path leads, this path leads. I might think this is the best path for me because I can only see this much. They're seeing way ahead and they know actually the left path, that's the path that's going to lead to everything you want. So trusting that divine guidance is super important because even for me, when I was in London working at a laboratory, I kept having the nudge like, this is okay, you're getting okay pay, but this is not the life you need to live. You need to go to Bali. And I was like, the fuck you mean go to Bali? To a random country so far away from my culture and everything I know, everyone I know. But I followed that nudge. And right now I'm like, what if I didn't go to Bali? Would I still be somewhere living a life that I hate, doing things that I hate, just feeling unfulfilled? I'm so thankful that I took that leap and I just went to this random country where my intuition was telling me to go. Even while I was here, I had so many instances where my intuition said, do something. And I thought it was crazy. And I think I'll close with this one small story of where my intuition was super strong and I wanted to ignore it. And I saw afterwards why I needed to follow it. I was in my bed, just sleeping, just having blissful sleep. And I heard this huge, like almost like explosion, like bam. And it like woke me up out of my sleep. So I opened my eyes. I was like, I think I just heard something like crash or some explosion or something, but obviously it was quiet now. So I was like, did I hear anything? And then I heard all the dogs in the neighborhood howling. So I was like, yeah, something woke them up. And so I was laying there and I heard in my mind, get up and go outside. Someone needs your help. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like 3:30 a.m. in my hotel. I had literally got to Bali maybe 2 months before. I'm like, this is still a strange place. I'm not getting up in the middle of the night outside. So I turned on my side and I was like, I'm going back to sleep. And then it's like, I don't know how to explain this. It's like the thought in my mind, like shook my mind, like, get up. Someone needs your help. I was like, damn, don't be yelling at me. I was like, fine. So I sat up and I listened again and I heard the dogs going like crazy. And I was like, it's so dark looking outside. And the voice said, get up and go outside. I was like, fine. So I got up, put on a little clothes, and then I looked outside of my hotel room. It was all dark in the hallway. I was like, this is ominous looking. And the voice said, go outside to the lobby. I was like, fine. So I walked to the lobby. I looked around. It was quiet. There wasn't even anyone at the front desk. Like, it was just dark. And I was like, see, like, why am I here? Then the voice said, go out to the driveway. And I looked outside and I was like, fine. So I walked out to the driveway. I looked around. I heard all the dogs howling. It was dark. I was like, what am I doing here? And then I saw a man starting to run towards me. And I realized it was one of the hotel staff. And he was running towards the hotel. And I was like, is everything okay? He's like, no, someone crashed their bike right up the road right there. And they're like bleeding on the floor. I was like, oh. Now I used to work in a hospital. I have some training in this area. So I walked, kind of jogged up and I saw this girl on the floor, this young girl. And she was bleeding like from this gash over her eye. She was like hysterically crying. Her boyfriend was there. I think he was drunk and he was like not even making sense, but she was on the floor like bawling. And a group of locals had formed around her, but none of them spoke English, right? So imagine you're in a foreign country, like bleeding. You can't even see. No one speaks English. She was hysterical. And I was like, oh. I needed to get up to help that girl because I was the only one there with any medical experience who could like help her with her cut over her eye, speak to her, let her, because she thought, I'm blind, I'm never going to see again. Like she was freaking out. And I was able to help her, call an ambulance for her, well, call a Gojek to take her to the hospital and like get her sorted out. And afterwards, I was like, okay, Spirit, I see what that was about, because that made all the difference for her in helping her to like get through that situation. So man, I have had so many stories where just taking that leap of faith, even in the small things, can lead to something big for yourself and something big for somebody else.
Amen. That's such that's such a cool story.
Yeah. And so I think, Kyle, that we have gone through so many things today. I'm going to leave it there for our listeners to kind of marinate on and think about. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so happy to have had you here. You hold a special place on my heart. Always. I don't know if you have, I know you have a lot of different sessions going on. I don't know if you want to leave any information so anyone listening can connect with you or look at any of the programs that you have going.
I would like to first of all, I'd like to just acknowledge you. You know, we met, I think, in some point in 2021.
It's 2020, man.
2021 for sure.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It's 21. I was already in London.
You were in London. I think you were literally flying out to Bali that day the day. Yeah. And just to see how Godspeed you have literally walked into the life of your dreams and are continuing to do so. Just, I have so much respect for that. And I'm just so stoked to see. Literally, it's like, I saw so much shift so fast. You're like in this completely different world. And it also doesn't feel weird at all. It just feels so completely normal that you're just like, oh yeah, she's just like plug and play right into the life of her dreams and doing what she loves. So I'm just acknowledging you for that. And I just wanted to shout you out.
That's sweet.
Outside of that, if you want to connect with me, I do comedy. I've been playing around with this new name, calling myself like a supernatural mentor. I combine like psychic readings with transformation. And you can message me on Instagram if you're interested.
And I will be the first to say, guys, any connection with Kyle is super transformative. As someone who has gone through one of his readings before, you cannot go wrong. So if you're feeling the pull, find him on Instagram. I'll put a link to his Instagram profile in the show notes so you can go connect with him. And yeah, we'll see you guys I'll talk to you guys. Why do I always say see when I know it's a podcast? I will talk to you guys in my next episode.